everyone, it's Frontier Opening Bell. I am Faith Agbetuya, bringing you the show this moment with our executive auditor here at Frontier Africa Reports, Bosin Mofaye. It's really great having you on the show, Bosin. So good morning, everyone, and we'll start the show right now with a look at a review of the closing figures of selected African markets. We took a look at about 5 markets yesterday, and it's a good one that they all ended on the green zone. We had Nigerian exchange finishing 0.06%, BRVM had 1.14%, Egyptian exchange had 0.43%, the Nairobi Securities Exchange had 0.04%, and the Johannesburg Stock Exchange recorded a 1.10% gain on the trading yesterday. It should be interesting for you to know that Egyptian exchange recorded a very positive note at the end of this week, and the next trading for Egypt will be on Sunday. Moving away from a look at those closing index, let's have a look at top headline stories in the East African financial market. The Central Bank of Kenya is set to raise 60 billion Kenyan shillings via 3 reopened bonds in the month of October this year. The Kenyan bank's forex deposits rose by 2.6 billion Kenyan shillings in the month of July. And the KNSC is introducing SEC lending and borrowing framework. In Namibia, in Tanzania, the NMB Bank is set to support tourism sector via loans. Qatar Airways is planning to make Kigali home for its Africa funds. Now, Kigali, which is the capital city of Rwanda, there is going to be having Qatar coming in as a big investor in the. In that sector, the airline. The airlines there will be having the big support of Qatar. And it's quite interesting to me, although many analysts have this fear that this move will cause some regional airlines in that area to suffer a bit due to the investment of Qatar, because airlines like the Ethiopian and Kenyan airlines will kind of suffer a little bit of losses. Do you think so too, Bosin?
Well, thanks, Faith. I think it's a world of competition, by the way. So you need to scale up your game. You need to raise your game, as it were, if you're in any market. So if you don't raise your game, then the bigger boys will come and take away your lunch. So don't cry to anyone that they are taking your entire lunch or they're slicing it away from you. But don't forget that Ethiopian Airlines, mentioned Kenya Airways, have had very strong on the ground. They are very iconic companies on the ground. Kenya Airways did the largest cargo movement across Africa for the entire 2020, despite the pandemic. Qatar Airways is very, very good. Qatar Airways is creeping in on the East African market, shadowing the Ethiopian Airlines, rightly put it, in Addis Ababa, and putting his home in Kigali, which is one settled politically, economically country. Remember, Kigali has been voted the 4th investment destination in Africa. So Qatar Airways is looking to bring its Africa Investment Fund to be headquartered also in Rwanda, and says you put your money where your mouth is and your mouth where your money is. So if there's going to be an investment fund from Qatar Airways, which will be investing not just in Rwanda, but across Africa, then you could as well put the headquarters of the seat of that money on the African continent. Why keep it anywhere else outside the continent if the money is, the fund is expected to leverage to be used in Africa? So I think it's a good one. Kigali is also, or Rwanda is also pursuing very aggressively the Kigali's International Financial Center, which is the KIFC, which the Nigerian Central Bank governor spoke about a week ago, that about Nigeria International Financial Center. Most people don't understand why this is very important. Nairobi is also working on its own Nairobi International Financial Center in partnership with the folks in the UK. Kigali is working with the guys in the Middle East and elsewhere. Nigeria is also working on its own. Kigali is almost done and dusted. This is very important phase. Nigeria should have had this since 2004, 2005, when the idea of the Lekki Financial Corridor was mooted under the then Central Bank Governor, Charles Soludo. But that was eventually abandoned under the FSS 2020 program just about some many years ago. Now it's being resuscitated under the current administration of the Central Bank. Let's see how that goes here. But again, there's no competition in the aviation business right now. Qatar Airways is one of the world's leading aviation, and they will give everybody on the continent a good fight coming in through the the East African and the Horn of Africa's corridor. But looking at the markets, which started your show with the Kenya Central Bank in terms of raising 3 reopened papers in the month of October, that's just about letting the market know what's going to do. Central banks around Africa do that. They do that all the time. They give you an idea of what the local bonds will be in local currencies. The deposit for FX in the month of July by Kenyan banks sounds a little bit familiar with the story in Morocco, where the banks are sitting on a pile of foreign currency. And this is coming through from export earnings, non-oil exports. So for Kenya, I think the banks will be making those money from export of tea and other products, avocado, which Kenya has one of the best in the world, and they're exporting it to US and elsewhere, and a whole lot of other products. So they have a number of tea companies listed on the Nairobi Stock Exchange. So there's a whole lot that Kenya is doing in terms of exports. So if they do a whole lot of cargo exports last year, Faith, you know that those money will be coming through the banks, through their domiciliary accounts in US dollar form. That is part of the problem Nigeria has, because we're not doing massively in terms of exports, such that we can earn aggressively in FX. Then that should be flowing into the banking system rather than the central bank selling FX to the banks. The banks should actually be selling to the central bank because there's so much liquidity in foreign exchange. But the reverse, the opposite is the case here in Nigeria. The central bank is the one selling the country's petrodollar and export proceeds to the banks so that they can sell to end users, those who want to do BTAs and PTAs, pay school fees abroad and what have you, which ordinarily should just go through your banks without involving the central bank selling the Commonwealth or oil proceeds. The oil proceeds we could use for very serious development, build schools, hospitals, and things like that. We're using it to pay, to sell to individuals who want to travel for just basic pocket allowances. I think we have a whole problem here in Nigeria to deal with. But good news from the Nairobi Securities Exchange, the KNSE, about securities lending. We're done and dusted here in Nigeria when it comes to securities lending and borrowing through the market. The SEC has a framework. The Nigerian Exchange Group already has securities lending in place. But if you look at Kenya with a very strong derivatives market, this is a good way to go.
Okay, thank you so much. Moving away from East Africa, let's head very quickly into West African region, where Nigeria is weighing United States FOMC for the foreign loans. That's coming from Patience Onieha. Let's see how this actually goes with Nigeria. But then let's, before I move on to the story on Vetiva Capital, posting, there are many thoughts of school on the heavy weight of borrowing and debt that Nigeria, or loans that Nigeria is kind of incurring. Don't you think that the country should kind of consider reducing the level of borrowings, especially at this time?
I agree with you, and I agree with the school of thought that we should slow down on external borrowings. But then what options do we have at the moment? The country is not generating enough revenue in local currency to pump into those infrastructure. The best way to deal with the issue of infrastructure, which President Buhari's administration is doing, which I am fully in support that we need those infrastructure. We need to repair those bridges and roads. We need to do a whole lot in terms of social infrastructure. But the best currency to spend is your local currency, because the contractors are going to be paid in Naira, by the way. So why borrow dollars and pay them in Naira? That's a whole lot of problem here. So if you pay the contractors in Naira, it will help you a lot better. That is on one side. So if you can raise your revenue locally and pay them in local currency, that is better, which the government is trying to do through Sukuk, by the way. But again, it's neither here nor there. Sukuk borrowing is in Naira, but again, there's a price to it from investors on one hand, not as much as dollar. Then the second point is that the private sector had not been sufficiently enticed. There is not so much good faith shown on the side of the government. There's a whole lot of problem with uncertainty, whether if the private sector, Mr. Vice President spoke about a week ago, at the Chartered Institute of Bankers annual event, that the private sector is invited to build hospitals and build schools and what have you. But who knows what the next administration will do, whether they will take over. If you sign this contract with the government for 10, 20, 25 years or so, are you sure the next administration is going to keep faith with those contracts and what have you? So the private sector in Nigeria locally, which has the local investment capital, are very skeptical in having a handshake with the government. They're not so much, the political environment is not so convincing. Then you talk about the judicial system. If you go to court with the government, what is your recourse? Will you be able to get justice at the courts to respect the contract you have signed with the government? So when local investors that have the deep pocket and who can get other investors to come in, look at the judicial system and they look at the political side, they bit of zip up on their pulse and say, sorry, we're not too sure yet if we can deal with you. So the government is not getting that private sector buy-in. So the handshake that the government is extending by words of mouth is not followed up by processes and systems on ground that the private sector want to see that those projects are bankable. Then you look at the political environment in which there's all this fight between the states and the local government. So these projects are going to be situated in states, by the way, so across the 36 states. So if you move, you're an investor in Lagos and you're putting investment money in Zamfara State or in Kogi State or in Anambra State, how are you sure that the political issues you deal with the state government when you get on the ground, how do you resolve it? So we have a whole lot of issues here that the only way that looks feasible for us to fix some of our infrastructure spending is to go borrowing for multilaterals, Euro bonds, and what have you. So until we're able to clean up our acts politically and governance-wise locally, we're going to keep going at borrowing, globally speaking, and that is where we are right now.
Okay, let's let's hold that on for a while. Vetiva Capital is launching West Africa Regional Equities Index, that's a VSI, and the PwC CEO, that's Andrew Nevin, is advocating blockchain for West Africa securities trading. From the Central Bank of Nigeria, that's e-Naira will boost cross-border trade, ease payment. That's coming from the Central Bank of Nigeria. In Burkina Faso, the country is raising 45.5 billion CFA in treasury bills in WAMU markets. Before I head on to the news items in the South African region, Wilson, I'd like you to give me your thoughts very quickly on this view from Nevin that blockchain should be considered for West Africa securities trading. Is that sitting very well with you also?
Well, everything that has the right regulation, enforcement, and protection of investors sit down well with me. I spent my entire career as a journalist on the market, so I'm in tune with market regulation. I love market regulation. I've seen investors lose money across various asset classes and all of that. So I'm a disciple of regulatory enforcement oversight. You can't just let some folks run wild and run a wire across because they're going to set up a system and do whatever they like and investors' money will disappear. Remember, Faith, this is your money. This is your pension. This is your salary. These are folks who have worked very hard for their investments. And you're not getting foreign investors to be particularly have confidence in your market when they see that your regulatory environment is so loose. It's not so. So we need to keep that in mind. What the chief economist and partner at PwC Nigeria, Andrew Nevin, said yesterday at the Vetiva conference, West African Market Conference, was to throw out the idea that if you want to trade the stock market, the equities market in Lagos and Accra and Abidjan, instead of using maybe the US dollar or using any other currencies like that, why don't we use tokenized technology, which is blockchain, to try and see if we can use that as a basis of doing transactions rather than considering the currency risk and a lot of other things, because the benchmark, if you're trading across the West African region, is the US dollar, which makes it easy at every point in time to see what the trade is. So you just convert the stock or the price into US dollar. But again, there's always a downside risk. Again, if you're moving it from Ivory Coast to Nigeria, and you are an investor from Nigeria, what happens? By the time you move, you want to convert your gains or whatever back into the local currency, there's a depreciation because of exchange rate. So you've lost money in a manner of speaking. So all this, what Andrew Nevin yesterday spoke about and said, look, it should be considered. And everybody at the conference agreed that yes, it's something to be considered. But again, there are issues of infrastructure to be regulation across board, across the three market region and all that. It's an idea there on the street. I'm sure it's going to come to light one of these days. But for now, it's still early days. The idea has been thrown into the ring. Let's see how the market authorities within the region will begin to play around that and make it happen. Okay, I think the Southern African markets is where we need to look at again on the show, because the South Africa Central Bank yesterday decided to leave interest rates unchanged at 3.5% in line with expectations. Inflation forecast by the Leseja Kagyango's team, the Monetary Policy Committee, was about 4.4%. But there was good news yesterday morning and Thursday morning, because South African Airways started flying again after about 444 days hiatus over the pandemic period of last year, and of course its own multi-billion rand debt. Now the airline is back in the skies after a whole lot of arrangements, and the authorities of President Ramaphosa are pumping in a few billions of rand, keeping some staff on the ground, in the air. The international flight started yesterday. Regional flights by South African Airways within Southern African region and elsewhere will start next week. But for now, international flights have resumed a bit on a skeleton note yesterday morning. Namibia is planning to issue green bonds next year, according to the finance minister. Everybody is piling into the climate adaptation issue ahead of the COP26 conference in November. Mauritius is looking to revive his own national airline with $282 million US dollars. The whole idea by the country on the Indian Ocean island is that, look, if we're going to get tourists back into the country, which they're doing very quickly, cleaning up and making sure they're back in business, the whole idea is to make sure that the country's national airline stay at the forefront of bringing the tourists onto the island and taking them back into mainland Africa or wherever else they want to go. They don't want to lose that market to any other airlines, including key competitors such as Ethiopian Airlines, Kenya Airways, South African Airlines, and other big names from outside the continent, including Qatar Airways that's now plugged its route for the continent in Rwanda. And U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris yesterday welcomed the new president of Zambia, Hichilema, to the White House. That was after His Excellency President Hichilema spoke at the floor of the United Nations General Assembly for the first time as a new president. It was also good news that the new president of Tanzania she also spoke at the floor of the UN General Assembly on Thursday. Two new African presidents spoke on Thursday at the UN General Assembly. Let's leave it there for now. North Africa is where Egypt is looking at capital gains tax. Will become effective January next year, according to the Minister of Finance. Egypt is looking to introduce the capital gain tax to a section of the investors and not really resident. This will be for non-resident investors. A bit of clarifications were provided a few weeks ago by the authorities in Cairo over who will be paid the new capital gain tax on stock markets activities, trading activities, effective January the 1st, 2022. Then Egypt's aluminum is turns to about 28.27 million profit in the month of January to June this year. That's a bit of a half-year reporting season. At Jerry Wafa Bank, one of the biggest bank north of the continent, reporting first half of the year stable non-banking income of 0.7%, 12.5 billion Moroccan currency. That's the dirhams. And Taka of Morocco first half group share net income 3.5% to 444 million dirhams as well. And finally, Tunisia's export volume grew by 7.3% in the month of August. That's quite commendable for the Tunisian markets. Again, but the political issues are yet to be resolved there with the President Said as well, with all the calls coming in from within and outside the continent on how the country should resolve its political issues and get the economy going, including the much needed credit facility from the International Monetary Fund. But let's follow up on all that in the days ahead. And that's the Frontier Opening Bell for today. On behalf of Faith Agbuti and myself, thank you very much for watching. I'll see you again on Monday. Bye for now.